Hey everyone, we're going to make marinara sauce. Let everyone know online kind of the ingredients we're going to use, but feel free to jump back to this at any point. We're going to take just a couple minutes, let everyone get online. But let everyone know we're starting with San Marzano style tomato, onions, garlic, a few spices, some salt, and it's pretty simple. So we'll let everyone get on and we'll see you in a minute. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is start with our onions. Chopping onions is something that a lot of people hate. A lot of people don't have super nice, sharp knives. So one way to get around those tears that you end up having with onions that come from dull knives is to take a piece of white bread and put it in your mouth. Weird sounding, but a lot of the oils that come from that onion that turn into gases will get soaked up in the white bread and not make it to your eyes. So if you really have dull knives, go for it. The other thing you can do is have a rag next to each slice. You can wipe the knife off with the rag. But if the knife's nice and sharp, it shouldn't be much of an issue. So for this sauce, I want to make this onion pretty fine dice. So here's the technique I'm going to use. So I'm going to cut off the head, leave the tail on. Head's off. I've started to peel just a little bit. The tail's still on here. Then I'm going to slice onion in half. Tucking your fingers in so you don't end up cutting yourself. I like to use my thumb to balance on top and the fingers on the side. Other people like to tuck their fingers up top. So I'm going to come down, go straight down the onion, go to the next layer. And then once I get toward the end, I actually flip the onion around. So after this first step, here's what it looks like. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different layers, all being held together with the tail. Then I'm going to go straight down the onion this way. Every once in a while you'll find a little piece of skin in there, or little tiny specks. Don't ever stress about that. Those end up cooking just fine, adds to the flavor. And once we're done with cooking something for this long period of time, it's okay. So now you can see that we have a bunch of little cuts in the onion going this way and this way. And now this is how easy the dice happens. So take my knife, here's how I grip mine, letting my palm rest here in the handle. This allows me to control it. I'm always trying to slice from this part of the knife forward. To get into the points, I'll go this way, and to dice, I'll go down. Tucking my fingers so they don't get cut. I'm actually using this part of my knuckle on the side of the knife to guide it, so I can make the cuts even. And you'll see, if you watch Food Network, any of those things, you'll see some of these guys coming in and going a million miles an hour. So I'm going to show you the onion, what it looks like. So fairly easy. It's a half an onion, and then because we don't want to waste any, I'll actually take the end, put it flat, and I'll make some more little scores in here. And then just finish it off. And so that's what we, and this, I'd call it, is a amount of waste there. So that's a half an onion. Go to the other half. I'm gonna do, for the amount of tomatoes I have, probably 3 onions. So I'm not gonna say too much, I'll just finish out these 3 and then we'll move on to the next step. If you're doing it at home with me, if you are a little slower, once the video's done, I'll post it so that you can go back at any point. So the other thing I'm not doing, I'm not putting the onion in the pan yet because I want to try and cook everything evenly. Let's see, how much tomato are you using so we can gauge the number of onions. So right here I have a whole ton of tomatoes. This is 102 ounces. It's called a number 10 can. This will last for a long time. We'll freeze it after. I would say 1 onion to every 30 ounces of tomato is great. It depends on the size of the onion though too, and how much onion flavor you like. So you can kind of just eyeball it and see what you think. There's no exact science to it. I don't ever think there's too much onion. My daughter would completely disagree with me on that, but hi everyone that's saying hello. So if you're just joining, I am just working these onions. We're dicing them pretty fine. They're gonna be the start of our sauce. Sometimes it gets a little slippery, so it's good to have a dry something like that near you. If you do have one of those onion chopper tools, those are fine to use also, especially for a sauce like this, because you're not going to see the cuts, and so they don't need to be nearly as precise as in something that would be maybe a raw preparation. That's onion number 2. It's gonna look like a whole ton of it, but once you see it cooked down and with the tomatoes, it won't seem like that much. Last onion, I'm cutting off the top. I started to peel to one side. That's where I cut it in half so that I can easily peel it. So there's the peel that started. And I can just kind of dig in. And so here's the choice you have to make too. So there's this first layer of onion right here that's brown, and then I look under and it's clear, but the texture is a little weird. So for me, I don't like this as much either, so I'll peel that second layer off. Even though that looks like good onion, that outside layer is not going to cook the same way as the rest of it, so I'm just losing it all. You can also see it's really thin here and it's thicker here, so it's pretty uneven. This will be a good view. So here I have that, it's almost shriveled up a little bit here. Even though it's not brown anymore, I'll still peel that off and not use it. So pretty easy way to dice onions for sure. So onions are done. Now I'm gonna heat my pan. If you can cook with gas, it's definitely even heat compared to electric, but if you have electric, it is what it is. That's fine. You just want to take a little bit longer to preheat the pan with an electric stove, and you want to move the pan around a little bit on it so that you don't burn your oil. So if you have an electric stove, just take your pan as it's preheating and make sure each bit of it gets heated. The other thing you'll notice is I'm using a relatively flat pan, and that's because when I'm cooking these tomatoes, I want more surface area for the water to evaporate, because I want to concentrate the flavor a little bit more. The kind of typical way to do this would be in batches. We'll just see how it goes. I have it there just in case, but the idea is to get the more concentrated tomato flavor. Let's see if I can answer any questions while this is preheating. Let's What's up? I had the tomato question already done. Comment about my... Yep, so now we're back. It looks like the kids are using all the Wi-Fi. So this is a Miyabi knife. It's really nice. It holds its sharpening a long time, and that's one of the reasons I use it. I also have, just in case that starts to act up on me, I have another one, but this is kind of my little baby. If you don't have this, that's fine too, though. Tricks like being able to put the bread in your mouth to avoid the gases from the onions. The biggest thing with a dull knife is you have to put more pressure on it to cut through, so it's way more dangerous. So you really have to be careful. I would always, with a dull knife, start at the heel and work your way to the toe, because then you're cutting away from yourself, and have a good grip on it rather than holding it here at the handle where it can flail a little bit. You want to kind of come in here and pinch and really hold on your knife this way. That way you have a lot more control over the knife. So this pan is heating a little bit. I have it on high, and you can always do the water test where you sprinkle water droplets in, and it looks like they are dancing around pretty well. I don't know if you can see that. Let's turn the light on here. And then I have the onions that I've prepared. Those are right here. This might be taking a little bit longer than normal. All right, so olive oil. So there were actually questions I had about olive oil. What type? When I'm cooking, it's not as important. The biggest thing is know that olive oil has a low smoking point, so it doesn't take high heat very well. So when I'm cranking this thing on a high heat to get this saute, I want to immediately get these onions in so that the oil doesn't burn. But I'm just using a regular extra virgin olive oil from Italy. You can use a smoother one. You can use a regular olive oil. The difference between the extra virgin and regular olive oil is the extra virgin doesn't see any heat while it's being pressed. So the olives are brought in. They're pureed basically to make a paste, and then the oil is pressed out of that paste. Known as the finest olive oil because there's no real production to it. So I'm going to put just a little bit of it. People always say, oh, a teaspoon, a tablespoon. I don't follow any of that. I just want to coat the bottom of the pan with a super thin layer. I don't want it to act like a deep fryer, but I don't want any part of the pan to not have oil in it. So I would guess I'm putting about 1.5 tablespoons of it in here. So just right now, you can already see the steam coming off of it. So it's blazing hot. I don't have this on the heat, and listen. So, I mean, that pan was just screaming, which is exactly what I wanted, because I want to get some brown on these onions, just barely, but not enough that they start to look, not like you'd brown a meat. I'm smelling it right away. Stirring it around. I'll show you here. So that's about as brown as I want it to get right there. So I'm stirring it pretty heavily. And then I'm going to turn the heat down to about medium, because now I want them to start to cook to the point that they get translucent. That's Susie. Hi, Susie. Susie loves onions. Do you like some? No. Susie does not love onions.
Should I go this way?
No, thank you. All right, so I have it at medium. We're getting to that point of translucent. As soon as I see that the oil is all kind of gobbled up from these onions, I might add just a smidge more, because I'm going to end up adding garlic in as well. So that's actually what I'm going to do right now. Just a little bit. The great thing about this sauce is there really isn't a lot that you can do that would screw it up. If you have the right idea of tomato, garlic, onion, basil, salt, you're fine. And everyone has a different palate and different tastes. The biggest thing that we're looking for is some acidity. So this will add some depth. The garlic adds even more. And then this bright tomatoes will be super acidic. And so I have all my onions in. We have garlic. You can use this. You can use garlic powder, which I don't like nearly as much. You can use, let me see if we have any of it. We do have it. You can use some of this minced garlic. That works fine. You can fine dice the garlic. You can do whatever you want with it. Tori asked if I add a pinch of sugar. I don't. In a lot of unripe tomatoes, usually these are pretty ripe. When tomatoes aren't ripe, sugar definitely helps the bitterness kind of go out, and so you still have the acidity. But I'll taste it, and at the end, if I feel that it's necessary, then I may. But generally, these canned tomatoes are pretty darn ripe, and that's what they do. Is they're the leftover tomatoes that they end up canning. So, and that's really kind of how tomato sauce came about in the first place. It was the leftovers. So, all right, we have all these fresh tomatoes. They're starting to rot. What do we do with them? And someone had the brilliant idea of making a sauce, and look where we are now. All right, so we have our garlic. This is my favorite, which is just getting cloves and pressing it. So I do have a garlic press. If you don't have one of these, you can chop it. You can put them in whole. If the one thing I'd say, if you put them in whole, is I would take them in a little bit of oil on the stovetop by themselves and start to get them caramelized, and then put them in, because the raw garlic's pretty pungent. All right, so I have the onions getting translucent right now. They look pretty darn good. Let me bring it over to you. So it's just that tinge of almost tan. I don't want them too brown, but you can see that they're, hopefully I'm not steaming up the camera too much here. They're almost starting to get to that point of being a little translucent. Then I'm going to take some garlic, put it in my garlic press, and press it right in. So there might be questions of why use a garlic press as opposed to dicing it or chopping it. And for me, the garlic press just helps distribute the flavor evenly across each bite, so you don't end up getting one of those bites with a huge chunk of garlic. Not that that's a bad thing, but for this preparation, it's just what we were going with. But you can do whatever you like, and it all works. So I'm just kind of eyeballing this. I think I'm going to put about 10 cloves of garlic in for this amount. Obviously, if you're using less tomatoes than the 100 ounces that I'm going to use a little less garlic. Or if you really love it, go for it. Just know that it's going to be really garlic forward. How much minced garlic? Okay. So 60 ounces of tomatoes, I would do maybe 8 cloves of garlic. And it looks like I just broke my garlic press. Yay. All right, well, with my garlic press broken, I guess I'll show you how to fine dice this garlic. Let me see if you can see the cutting board from in there. Looks like you can, so here's what I'm gonna do. So I'll take a clove of garlic. I'm going to turn this way down because I don't want that garlic to overcook. So I have my clove. I don't want any of this paper stuff on here, so I'm gonna tear that off. So I now have the clove without any of the outer layer. I'm gonna use the same knife here, and this takes a little bit more finesse. So I'm just gonna go down, just like I did the onion. I'm gonna leave this tail portion on. I'm gonna go down and make super small cuts. I'm really gonna avoid putting my fingers in harm's way. So I've now cut a bunch of little pieces like that. Then I'm gonna go down lengthwise. On this, rather than standing it on end, I'm just gonna use the cutting board and go along the side. So there it is. And now I'm going to go really, really small with it. Once again, using my knuckles to guide. And you can see there's my garlic. So that'll go right in. So onions are translucent. Garlic is just warming up, basically, in the onions. I have it on really low, and now we'll move on. Here's the tomatoes, but first, I'm gonna use a little bit of tomato paste. And tomato paste is just super concentrated, baked. All of the liquid is gone. For what I have, I'm gonna use 2 full cans. That's, once again, kind of to taste. So I'm going to use a rubber spatula and get this tomato paste out. It's going right into this onion and garlic mixture. Once I have both cans of the paste in, then I will turn the heat back up and let this paste start to caramelize even more. At the very end, I may rinse the can with a little bit of water and dump it in, and I'm planning on cooking that water off. Okay, so here's can 1 done. All right, so I have cans. There is still a little bit of paste inside, so I am going to use a little bit of water. So I still have this on low while this is happening, and you use my rubber spat, stir it up, just try and get the sides scraped down. See if I can get most of that good tomato stuff out of here. That'll go in, and then I'll do the same thing with can number 2. At this point, I will turn the heat back to scorching. I'm going to try and work this tomato paste into the onions as quickly as possible so they don't overcook. And all I'm trying to do here is caramelize the paste a little bit in with this onion. Show you what it looks like. See see if I have any more questions here. Thanks to Phil for commenting on my strength. I appreciate it. So now I'm smelling it. It's really hit me because the heat hit these tomatoes, and now it's kind of filling the room. The garlic is blooming in this tomato paste. Wow, it's a really, really great smell. Here, no smell? Here. I'm getting heckled by my wife on that one. So.
How many viewers do you have?
All right, now we move on. San Marzano tomatoes.
Hey, Dad.
Okay, I feel like this started to caramelize. You can actually see the bottom of the pan. So this is the key. This is what I'm looking for. This little bit of almost dried tomato at the bottom of the pan. At this point, I'm going to turn the heat down to low. Let it sit there for a minute. I've opened my can of tomatoes. These are San Marzano style. These are Californians. If you're on the East Coast, probably not as easy to get. You'll probably find more actual San Marzano tomatoes, and that's fine. And really, in the end, if all you have is tomato sauce, crushed tomatoes, diced tomatoes, they all work. So I'm going to dump my can here. Make a huge mess all over the place that I will clean up later, I'm being told. I don't want to throw that out. That is all amazing. All right, here's the weird part. I washed my hands before this. You should wash your hands at this point. I have a bunch of tomatoes in here. Whole San Marzanos. Some people use a food processor. This is the best way, I feel, to do it. You just work it with your hands and just pull them apart. So dig in and get messy here. And all I'm trying to do is kind of hand crush all these tomatoes. This is definitely a more rustic preparation doing it this way, but it's at the end you'll find it's so delicious and has a little more texture than just using sauce. And the other thing that with crushed tomatoes is they break down pretty quickly, and especially with the amount of time that we're planning on cooking this, because I plan on letting it simmer for about 5 hours. So I'm going to keep digging, get everything I can from the bottom. Now it doesn't need to be perfect, but here's kind of what I'm looking for. So just pieces like this. Just about done. You may be a little quicker because you're probably using less tomatoes than I am. Sometimes in these cans you'll find some of the leaves. Just throw that right out to the side, no big deal. Okay, I'm pretty happy with the consistency and the texture of all of these now. Just gonna make sure at the very bottom there isn't anything. So here they are. There's just a little bit of paper, and this is going to go right in. Now, what I've done is rinsed my hands off. I don't want to rinse the bowl out. I want to use all of the rest of this tomato, all of this tomato in here. So I'm going to take just a little more water, pour some into the bowl, pour some into the can. And remember, this is all going to cook off, so I'm okay with it. Use that same rubber spat. Try and get everything I can out of here. And then same thing here, and it's gonna go right in. Waste not, want not, right? All right, so we have garlic, onion, tomato. What else do we need? Anyone? How about salt? Just a little bit of salt to start. We can always put more at the end. Remember, as this cooks down, the flavor is going to concentrate, so I don't want to oversalt it now. So I'm just going to sprinkle it with some, get it started. Coarse kosher salt is my salt of choice, but if you don't have it and you have iodized salt or sea salt, whatever, it's all good. I am a huge fan of fresh herbs. Not everyone has access to it. So for today, I am going to use dried herbs. Fresh herbs I would not put into the sauce right now because as they cook, they can become acrid, bitter. With dried herbs, I like to bloom them in the sauce so they take on the flavor. So I have some dried basil. I'm just going to put a little bit of it in. I don't want to overpower it now. I can always add more in later, but I'm just going to sprinkle it in. I'll show you what this looks like. I'm adding a little bit of oregano. I was able to find some parsley flakes, just a smidge. And these are all dried and they'll bloom. If you have fresh, I would hold off at this point. Don't put fresh herbs in until maybe the last hour and a half or so. They'll take on plenty of flavor. It's not a problem. The other things you can do here are add red wine. I would not add any meat at this point. I would not add any other vegetables like mushrooms at this point because they will overcook and you'll lose a lot of the good texture. If you are adding things like mushrooms in, olives, capers, I would put those in. Olives, capers, maybe 2 hours before. Mushrooms, maybe half an hour before you're done. If you're planning on making extra and saving it, I would only put the amount of mushrooms that you're going to have that night into that batch of sauce and not put much more because you lose some of the texture, and especially when freezing, it just isn't. Mushrooms are about, obviously, the umami flavor, but the texture too, and when you lose that, it just kind of, it's a bummer. It's not as good as it could be. So here is the sauce. It's on low. I'm going to turn it up to about medium just till I see it start to bubble. I'll show you what we look like here. So you see all that texture, and you can see the onion now. And then a few hours from now when we come back, you'll see a huge difference in the sauce as it cooks down. Depending on the taste, I may add wine in. I may add more salt. I'll probably add more salt. And we'll go from there. But that's kind of it. Feel free to share this. Feel free to ask any questions. I'll answer the best I can. And we'll see you in a few hours for the finished product. Bye.